امیدوارم که به هر حال رضایتو بگیریم انشالله.
انشالله چرا آقای آیت دیگه حتما دیگه تو رو خود ما امیدمون به شماست آقای آیت.
3 2 1 استودیو آنتن.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. به نام خداوند بخشنده مهربان. سلام.
درست اون ساختمونی که میبینین منزل مردی وجود داره که مهرمان
5 سال گذشته توسط همسرش به قتل رسید.
قتل عمد که نکردم آقا.
حکمت قصاصه.
مریم کمیجانی سالها با تنها دختر ناصر مونا زیاد دوستی و ارتباط کاری داشت.
فقط میگی زیا آقا بود، مونا برام خواهری کرد، منم پشیمونم. همین. بزن بریم بیرون دیگه. بشین عزیزم بشین.
شما عزیزان اگر خانم مریم کمیجانی رو مستحق بخشش میدونین عدد 1 رو به شماره 3301 و اگر نه عدد 2 رو به همین شماره پیامک بفرمایید. با ما همراه باشید.
داره دروغ میگه تو بودی.
بذار حرفشو بزنه.
اینا چیه داره میگه؟ برای من مسئولیت داره، برای شبکه خوب نیست، قطعش کنید آقا.
نمیبخشه. حق داره والا.
وایسا من فقط میخوام اعدام بشه.
هرچی خواستی گفتی بخش. انصافا خودت جای اون خانم بودی میبخشیدی.
Hi, Mr. Bakhshi. Thank you for coming to this interview today. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So what time of day are you? We are here in the morning.
Well, it's the night time here.
It's a nighttime here. There. So you're based in where now?
I'm now in Paris, but I'm based in Tehran. So,
You're based in Tehran, but you're in Paris. Are you there for a project?
yes, I'm here for a project, yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna ask again to sit around the middle of the picture so that we don't get cut off. So today we're gonna talk about your recent film, Yalda, A Night for Forgiveness. And it has been the winner of multiple awards, the Sundance 2020 Grand Jury Prize, World Cinema Competition in the category of dramatic films, the best screenplay from Sofia International Film Festival in 2020, and best director from Antalya Golden Orange Film Festival in 2020. It was also nominated for 14 Plus Crystal Bear from Berlinale and recently for Lumiere Award. It's now available for viewing on virtual cinema on Film Movement, and we are gonna put the link below this video. So I first heard your name from Tehran Has No More Pomegranates, one of my favorite documentaries. And then I saw your first feature film, Respect the Family, and now Yalda, which I quite liked. So let's talk about a lot of like aspects of directing, sound, camera work, mise-en-scène, and those things in this interview, because I see a lot of stylistic and narrative merits in the film, and I think it would be a great also educational opportunity for the people who are watching this to learn some aspects of filmmaking. Shall we?
Well, I'm considering myself still a kind of a student of art and filmmaking, and I'm still learning. So I don't think that I can give lessons, to the others. But talking about my last feature film, Yalda, I have to say that it was a kind of a special experience for me because I don't like television world and to me, television is somehow very very superficial, and I can say representative of the kitsch, world. And that's why I couldn't imagine myself making a film, that the whole story is happening, in a television program. But it's all depends on your story. I mean, I had this story, and then as I was developing it, writing several drafts of the script, I arrived in a moment that I saw this reality show, in the Iranian TV, and it was so shocking and surprising to me that I decided, to tell my story in the frame of this program. And then, I mean, everything, just following, this decision that once you decide to make, your film in the frame of a television reality show, then you have to follow, several rules, to be realistic at the same time, to reflect the reality and the truth of this program in a very natural way.
Perfect. Yeah, I remember that you worked in TV, and then you moved to cinema after that. And you made a lot of documentaries on TV, actually.
I never worked for TV, but I made lots of documentaries. I never, made documentaries for TV, but because television format, it's somehow very, I can say, it's never, it's very far from what we call a creative documentary. I think it's more closer to what is called the reportage, a kind of a daily program, reporting, just like a newsreel. And I always try to make, creative documentaries.
Right. Yeah. As of course we can see, in Tehran has no more pomegranates, which was actually, I think it was in the history of Iranian documentary, it was a turning point. It was also influenced by the films before it, but also to making documentary more popular. I think it was, at least after a long time, it was one of the first documentaries that got theatrical exhibition on that level in Iran, right? And
Yes,
people could go to see.
It was released actually in the cinemas, in some few cinemas, yeah.
Yeah, and it had a good box office too, which is rare for a documentary film. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Yalda, and I want to start with opening. In the Screen Daily review, I saw that the reviewer said that like the opening does not really match the rest of the film. I disagree. I think it actually sets up a lot of things for the film. One of them is what I really like, the use of sound. There is a very good use of sound in this film, and one of them is the way that you use sound to direct the audience from one point of the narrative to another point, and kind of like guide the audience, and also guide the characters. So there are sometimes that some things are revealed for the characters through the sound, or sometimes you hide information from us through sound. There's a lot of subjective sound too. In the opening, we see that you open with that Milad Tower shot, and there is like the sound is kind of calm. There's not much of a sound of a traffic. It's kind of a muffled sound of traffic. And then we go down, and the urban noises become louder and louder and louder until we get to the police car. And then the sound of the police car suddenly fills the soundtrack. and then we follow that until we get to the building where Mariam is coming handcuffed. So just through the sound, that's like, oh, we are in this seemingly calm situation. And when we get to this mega city with all those urbanizers, but let's now focus on this one specific story through this police car that I'm going to guide you to that building. So can you talk a lot? I want you to also talk about the other instances of using sound creatively, and I'm going to bring the examples, but can you talk about the designing of sound in this film and what you were thinking about it?
Well, I think you explained very well about the details, and I remember that for both of my fiction films, I needed to write something like a sound script, which is not usual, at least for Iranian, sound crew, because well, they what they see, what they need, is in the time of preparation before the shooting to talk to the director and to note some few points, and then go to shoot the film, and then afterwards doing sound, some extra sound if it's needed. But for Yalda, from the beginning I knew that it's going to be a kind of very, very difficult situation, for a director that wants to kind of to have a kind of creative mise en scène, because it's very, very limiting, the whole thing happening in the real time in one place, and to keep the unity of the time and the place needs a kind of hard work, on the image, but also on the sound. And I was lucky to have one of the best, sound engineers, who was attentive, who was from Iran himself, but also working in several international projects, and he knew, this sensitivity, and also the importance of the sound and the off-screen sound, in this project.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of sounds that we hear in the film, they are off-screen sounds, and we don't see the origin, of the person's talking, or the music or sound effects, coming from different places, different sources. And I think he managed to do a very, very good job, because his work was not limited to the shooting, but after the shooting, each shot and scene and sequences, and he used to stay and record extra sound. And when we did the sound mix in Geneva, I remember that sound mixer, who was a very good sound mixer in Europe, he was astonished by the quality of the sound work of the sound engineer. And also, but basically we used a lot of these sounds in different places of the film. But we talked also a lot, about the designing the sound after the shooting, and in the mixing process. And well, I'm happy that you explained well that you hear different sounds, that and you can feel being there, in the mega city, which is Tehran.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about off-screen sound that we're gonna come back when we are gonna talk about the camera work, which is very great in this film. But before that, let's talk about the use of subjective sound too. There are so the first time that Maryam comes into the building, we see that her mother is following her, but the sound of the footsteps are much louder than the voice of the mom. So it's a very subjective sound of Maryam. And then we see that again when Maryam comes on the stage of the TV show for the first time. Everything is muffled out. I'm curious about your use of subjective sound in these moments. And yeah, if you can talk a little bit about this kind of use of sound.
خانم کمیجانی بفرمایید خواهش می‌کنم. بینندگان عزیز مستند تصویرگذاری ببینید که فکر می‌کنم تا حدود زیادی زوایای پنهانی پرونده رو برای شما روشن کرد. انتخاب این داستان هم مثل سایر قسمت‌های برنامه لذت عقل از میان صدها پرونده قضایی و با هدف بخشش و نجات محکومین صورت گرفته. بسیار خوب بینندگان عزیز، من یک بار دیگه خدمت شما عزیزان یادآوری کنم که مثل هر هفته میتونید در مسابقه پیامکی ما شرکت کنید. شما عزیزان اگر خانم مریم کمیجانی رو مستحق بخشش میدونین عدد 1 رو به شماره 3301 و اگر نه عدد 2 رو به همین شماره پیامک بفرمایید. در پایان برنامه اگر تعداد پیامک‌های عدد 1 از 5 میلیون بیشتر بشه نصف مبلغ دیه و اگر از 9 میلیون بیشتر بشه کل مبلغ دیه از طرف اسپانسرهای محترم برنامه انشالله اهدا خواهد شد. اما قبل از هر چیز از شما عزیزان دعوت میکنم که بریم سراغ داستان واقعی امشب برنامه. با ما همراه باشید. سلام عرض میکنم خدمت میهمانان عزیز برنامه، سرکار خانم منازیا و خانم مریم کمیجانی.
Well, there are other, few moments in the film that this subjectivity vanishes, in the general ambience of the TV studio, in the backstage, but also on the stage. But basically, this subjectivity in the sound, and it's not limited only to the sound, it's also in the image. I wanted to keep it as a rule, that's one of the rules that I just invisible rules that I had for myself, making this film, because it's a story of this woman, we should be close to her and we should follow her more than every other, minor character in the film. And well, what you have, as a director, it's the sound and then image, the two more two important, very important elements, more than any other things, and I really try to create this subjectivity through these two elements. And the sound was very important because we had this chance, to do the first kind of designing of the sound by recording the sounds which are not necessarily, related to the place that the story is happening, related to the location, but can give you the feeling of, these claustrophobic, ambience of the place and the location, and what the character is feeling, at the moment. And also the image, we did this also through the image, through the lots of talks and discussions we had with cameraman, with the DOP, and also with the sound engineer of the film.
Yeah, well, you led us to the next part that let's talk about this camera work that you say that it's the story of Maryam mainly, and that's why you get closer to her subjectivity and you follow her more. This is what we see in camera work a lot, that the camera follows Maryam and a lot of other characters remain off screen and we hear them. A lot of things happen off screen and we hear them. Yeah, can you talk about this kind of camera work? A lot of long take, especially before we get to the TV show. A lot of long take that you follow the characters from room to rooms. And we see sometimes other characters are even cut off in the frame, showing that they are the secondary character from the very beginning. Yeah.
Well, the image also was to me, it was clear from the beginning that we're going to have the two different style for the camera work and for the image, because the film is divided to what we see on the stage and what we see on the backstage, and we adopt two different, forms, or let's say styles, different styles for each, part, but which is somehow emphasized on the contrast existing in the story. This is the film full of contrast between the main characters, Mariam and Mona, contrast between the kitsch world of television and also the tragic world of the reality of the society, and the contrast between two different images, on the stage and backstage, was really crucial and essential from the beginning. That's why what you see on the stage is just close to the real images of the TV, the style, the TV style, the fixed classical, medium shot or close shots of the reality shows, and I can say 90% of the images that you see in the backstage, we have the handheld camera and a very shaky, very agitating, movement of the camera, very close to the characters and with a very dark light, just close to the reality. And I think the work of DOP was also the result of his patience and his passion, to not only to work, in a country that he didn't know before, because that was his first time being in Iran, and he didn't know the Iranian culture before, and he really tried to learn, things about this culture, not only about the attitudes of the people, and also about the story and the script, but also about the lights, about the places, the people, and the way they do these kind of, reality shows in Iran. And I think he succeeded, at the end, to have a very good communication with his assistants. I'm really happy that the camera crew, consisting of, I don't know, 8, 9 Iranian assistants, and also the light crew, because the DOP was from Germany, and the light, I mean, we had also a gaffer from Luxembourg, and they did a very good, pact, and the whole team, was really dedicated to shoot the film, and the fact that they liked the story and they understood it, I think it was very helpful for the way they did it.
Did you show them those shows before shooting the film?
Of course, we did a kind of research, to because it was essential for these two key roles of the image team to know the ambience of this kind of program, but also the way they produce it. So I think they watched several episodes on the YouTube, and also they tried to find and to watch the backstage of these kind of programs to get to know, how they produce these kind of reality shows.
So you talked about this kind of different style in the TV show and outside of the TV show. And yeah, that was very interesting. One of them is that kind of like long take versus more cut, and shot scales, and also handheld versus being on tripod. I'm curious, there was a couple shots on the TV stage that were from the opposite angle, and they were handheld, and you were showing those opposite angles of Mariam and Mona. Were they supposed to be the filmmakers' peak view of their feelings and faces that the TV show didn't show to the viewers? Do you know which ones I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, during the whole film, I tried to invite the audience to put himself or herself at the place of a TV spectator, and to see the whole, this show, this spectacle. And this I wanted to do in a way that he or she doesn't understand or notice, at least, that at which moment, the mise en scène of the TV reality show is just replacing, the mise en scène of the film, and vice versa. So those shots, I think, were part of the mise en scène of the film, which is, basically this shaky camera, recording and following the characters, behind the scene. And while in the reality show, what we see, it's basically what is, aired by the television. And but I try to keep this balance, also in the editing, not to force or to oblige the audience to get a conclusion, or kind of having a kind of judgment, over the story. While the whole story is about judgment, this reality is inviting somehow the audience to judge, by voting, and it was a kind of play for me, just to play with these two themes of the film, also in the mise en scène.
How many cameras did you have for the TV show part?
Well, basically, we shot the whole film with two main cameras, and for the shooting of the stage, we had something like seven cameras in total.
But for the film part, you had two cameras.
Yes.
Right. So the two cameras were shooting at the same time during those long takes too. How was it working?
Not always.
Okay.
We had two cameras.
Okay, I'm guessing it was probably in the control room where you had more editing that you had two cameras, right? Not outside of it.
In the control room we shot only with one camera, actually.
With one camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but in different places we used both of the cameras. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask that, like, how shooting with two cameras helps you? Was it just faster that you could do more coverage?
No, no, it was only. I mean, well, basically one of the cameras used to be a kind of backup camera, you know,
Mm.
just to be certain that we have, you know, enough material, but also we have, you know, we have the second camera, you know, in the place. But apart from the show itself, most of the film was shot by only one camera because it's a handheld camera, and yeah, we wanted to shoot the film. I wanted to have the control over the image, so we had to work only with one camera. And in the scenes that we used several cameras, well, we tried to talk before, you know, to have a kind of to accord all of the team, you know, not only the cameras and the images, but also the cameraman and the crews, you know, to have a kind of harmony in their work.
Yeah. So there is we are gonna talk about editing a little bit too, because they're kind of related, this kind of long take versus more cutscene. But also there was this interesting moment close to the end that spoiler alert, that when we get the final news from Mona on the stage close to the end. The interesting thing is that you don't cut to Mariam. While it's Mariam's story and it's about Mariam being forgiven or not, when the news is dropped, it's not, you don't cut to Mariam, but you cut back to the control room, which I found it quite fascinating, because it's all about, the whole story is about exploitation. How this TV show is exploiting these people, how everyone is exploiting someone else. So was that editing choice made in the editing room? Why did you make that choice? I'm curious.
Well, well, I can say that till the I mean, half of the first half of the film, we are with Mariam. And Mariam is the main character. And there is this radical change of the point of view when we leave with Mona, you know, and it becomes Mona's story, or Mona's point of view. And at the same time, as you mentioned, you know, we have this TV crew, you know, who's just having this aim, you know, to get the happy ending, you know, for the show. And the most important thing for them, you know, is to have this happy ending. And well, the point of view of the film is just changing between these three, you know, group of people. I mean, these three characters, main characters. And at that time, I think the second part, you know, we have these important sequences, you know, dedicated to Mona's story, and that's why we just feel close to her, and we just feel a kind of sympathy to her. Also, we discover that she's not, you know, a kind of diabolistic, you know, female character that wants definitely, you know, to get the money, you know, or to execute this other woman, and she's a human being just like every one of them. And to create this feeling and to create this sympathy, I needed also to get to bring other characters into the story and to make them, I mean, to to get involved all the minor roles also in this story.
So you talked about light and color, those two things too. There is this interesting element in the production design that the stage is blue, but then in the end, when behind the stage is revealed, it's a very red stage actually, or a very red environment, and there's a lot of seats that are behind the stage that suddenly get revealed. Were you thinking about that contrast, that like this TV is actually hiding their true color and what's behind them through production design? Was that an intentional choice?
Well, there are a couple of intentional decisions, yes, that we made for choosing the colors, just like other, choices of the film.
Yeah.
But red color, because it's Yalda, of course, and the color of Yalda is red. And well, basically, we talked a lot about the depth and also the texture and also the warm and cold, colors, helping, the story, the narration, the narrative of the film, because I wanted, the main discussion we had with the DOP, but also the sound engineer and with the whole team, was to keep everything in the service for helping the narrative of the film. And I think they were really, really understanding and cooperative to achieve it.
Let's talk about the screenplay a little bit. I'm curious, why did you ever think about turning this into a dark comedy, tragic comedy, rather than because there are so many dark comedic elements in the film, right? The whole TV show itself is absurd, can easily, with a little bit of modification, turn into a dark comedy. The situation where the film star comes on the stage and reads that poem and it just goes off. The way that they call the Blood Money Award, the whole situation with the text messages. There's a lot of, this is my one of my favorite things, the University of Applied Sciences and Morals. That's a made-up university, right? I couldn't find that. And with their empty statement, there's a lot of these elements. Did you think about turning it into a comedy, dark comedy?
Well, I thought about a couple of things, yeah. I think it all depends from which angle and from which point of view you watch this film. It is a dark comedy. It is a kind of surrealistic film also. It's not a realistic film. But all depends, as I said, to the angles and also to your look, to your the way you look, the way you watch the film. And of course, I try to keep, the natural, the realistic tone of the film, by making it, as realistic as possible. And I think the surrealistic elements, they are, in the heart of the story, and also of the absurd and dark and sad reality, the tragic reality that's is happening, during the story.
Because I remember in some of the reviews they were comparing this with Farhadi's works, and I think that's not a good comparison. The tone is different. It's talking about a different thing, and the style is different. unfortunately, there's a lot of the films that come out of Iran these days that are going to be compared to Farhadi's films anyway. That's why I was like, this is a director who has made Tehran Has No More Pomegranates, very good sense of humor. And you can see a lot of it in this. So I thought maybe in the second half, that humorous tone maybe is a little bit less strong, maybe. And I thought that, was it why did you turn it into a more like emotional story in the second half, especially in the last third of the film?
Well, it was the story of these women. It's a very female story. I mean, the fact that during the research process and also the shooting process, I changed a few elements in the story, and at the end it became very female. With at least 9 or 10 female characters in the film, including the minor, female characters. And I think, at some point, as I wanted to be really realistic, in the tone, the emotion was inevitable, somehow. And the way the actresses played the role, I mean, believed in their roles, and they played it, very realistically. It added up, to the emotions existing in this scene. But of course, the critical point of view towards the media, in general, it exists in the film, and you can see it, you can feel it.
Yeah, you can definitely see the spectacle that the TV is putting up, from preparing for the snow in the end to the whole situation with text messages. Do you think that the Iranian audience see a little bit of a different film than the foreign audience? That's true for any film, but especially that because we have seen those programs very realistically, we've kind of grown up with those programs. Do you think we see more of a realistic movie than the people outside if they don't know these shows exist? And so that's like, this looks completely absurd to have this kind of show on TV. Do you think they see more of an absurd tone in the movie than the Iranian audience?
I don't know. I had received, different feedbacks and from different, people all around the world, but to me myself, it was important to make the film in a way that an Iranian audience, just like you, that knows, these kind of reality shows, cannot say that this is not realistic, And I'm really happy and proud that people inside of Iran took it just like a kind of copy paste of the existing reality show, which is not true, because obviously this is a kind of surrealistic version of
there's exaggeration definitely.
And but the whole challenge was that how to make this film, and be realistic at the same time, have a kind of critical point of view.
I'd like to know whether there was like challenges for the editor that didn't know the language, because there's a lot of dialogue in the film, and a lot of pacing and finding the rhythm of the movie comes into where to cut the dialogue, how to cut dialogue. Was it a challenge, and how did you approach it?
I can say yes and no. Yes, because obviously Jacques Cometz, the editor of the film, was French, and he does not speak yet Farsi. But no, because we have worked, in my first film, A Respectable Family, together. And for Yalda, he had a very, very good knowing of not only me, as a filmmaker and my world, and my taste, but also from the story, you know, because he knew very well the script, and then the advantage of the doing a simultaneous, you know, editing and shooting, you know, I mean, just parallel to the shooting, it was a great help. And of course, we, at the end of the shooting, we finished also, I mean, 1 week or 2 weeks later, after we finished also the editing, the first, you know, rough cut of the film. And then in Paris, we worked something like two months on the editing. But I think the language was not the kind of barrier or obstacle for the editing, because the whole thing for editing in a fiction film comes from first from the emotion of the actors and the movement, and secondly, it's all about the rhythm of the whole piece. And I think even if in the first rough cut, which was elaborated during more than 2 months, you know, I could see that this rhythm and this movement and this emotion exists. So all we did was a kind of very subtle elaboration, you know, with the editor. But he knew very well, you know, during the I remember that we shot the film in the afternoon and in the night time. And in the morning, early in the morning, he used to start, you know, his work with an Iranian assistant. And by the time we were starting the next day of shooting, we had, you know, the material of the previous day ready, and we could see, you know, I could see that he's very, very clever in choosing the takes, the proper takes, and also in the way he edited the whole stuff. And yeah, editing is very fascinating process, actually.
So I have 2 last questions. One, I would like to know your view on like how it affected your work, how it affected your relationship with cast and crew, the transition from film to digital. And then lastly, I would like to know if you're working on some projects now.
Well, the second question I answer first. Well, I'm working on several projects, because when you're living in Iran, you have to work on several projects in parallel. But the first question, no, I don't see any difference actually between, of course, there are differences, you know, in different levels, you know, and different parameters and elements, you know, of the digital and also film, you know. But I think the quintessence of the cinema is the same. Do you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of even relationship with your crew, like for your cinematographer, with your editor, did anything change? Do you think that
you mean the fact that we shot in digital?
Yeah, because, well, you can see you have more of an idea of what happens in the final image with digital.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Imagine, you can imagine that in the film, there is something
Your
like...
camera is tilting, Mr. Bakhshi.
Yeah. Well, in the film, it's I'm just trying to remember how many shots we did, you know, with the green screen, you know, something like 500 different screens, you know, and it's huge, you know, for VFX, for what was done, you know, in the whole, I mean, in the post-production process. But and obviously it was a kind of huge facility and advantage that we could have through digital, cinema. But what is, again, I repeat that what is important, it's the narrative and the emotion that a film and a story can create, and everything. I mean, every technical detail at some point should be. Sorry, my camera just falls down. Should be. I mean, every technical detail should be in the service of this narrative and emotion, the creation of emotion, especially when you shoot a fiction film.
Do you have a preference, or do you think you would go back to film, or no, you think that working with digital is easier and you don't want to go back to film?
I'm always just dreaming to shoot a film in film stock.
Really? So why is that?
Yeah. I don't know. It's another story. It's I mean I don't know. It's maybe also nostalgic, or
Okay.
But I mean the whole exposure, exposing something, with the light on the pellicule, it's fascinating.
Right.
And I think for everyone who has experienced this, it's the same.
Right.
And well, I'm coming from the generation that I learned, photography not through the digital, cameras, but by mechanical, simple, and not simple, but at the same time very handy way of, doing the photography. And but I have always keeping this passion to work with film again.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Bakhshi. This was a great talk, and I hope that viewers also learned a lot about this film, but also about the craft of filmmaking. Again, people, you can watch this film now on virtual cinemas through Film Movement. Highly recommend that. And if you get to watch Tehran Has No More Pomegranates and Respect the Family, his previous films, they are also, I highly recommend watching those films too. Thank you very much, Mr. Bakhshi, for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.